Welcome, guys, to a new episode of Butts and Mates. I'm your host, Julian Slick, and today we're joined by a very special guest. Please say welcome to Max Derrat.
Dude, you said my name wrong. It's Max Derrat.
It's good to have you on
Why
here.
are you laughing? I'm offended. No, I'm kidding. No, it is. He actually said it right. I'm just joking. That's it. We were talking about it before the show. It's good to finally talk to you, dude.
Thanks, man. It's good to have you on here. Would you like to tell the audience what you do on your own channel?
No. No, for my YouTube channel, what do I do on my YouTube channel? I talk about games, movies, books, just stuff that interests me, which is kind of interesting because normally you don't really build a YouTube channel just doing whatever you want. You have to sort of brand it, but really that's what I do. What am I famous for? Silent Hill, talking about Silent Hill, if you like those games. Metal Gear Solid. I'm not a weeb, even though I actually talk about a lot of stuff from Japan. But those are my favorites, my favorite franchises. And also just big ideas from the realms of psychology, religion, history. If any of those things sound good to you, then maybe give my channel a look-see.
Yeah.
Pretty please.
I can say for myself that Max Derrat, I saw his YouTube channel a year ago when I started getting interested in Half-Life. And I saw his video about the story explanation about the G-Man and all that. So that's how I met him. But afterwards that, I binge-watched his YouTube videos. And I can say he's incredible well. I mean that you're a very well YouTuber, and you also helped me a lot of my life. I can't speak. It actually means a lot to have you on here, man.
Hey, no, it's no problem, dude. And it's thank you for your kind words. And it's also really nice to hear that there are people keeping the love of Half-Life alive, and that internal burning hope that one day we will get a Half-Life 3.
I mean, Alex, yeah. Half-Life Alex was, like a demo Half-Life 3, so,
Yes.
Let's just
Here's
wait.
Open. If it ever gets made, I am going to get a VR headset for Half-Life 3. I would do anything for that game.
But today we're not discussing about Half-Life. Today we're going to discuss about a film that you actually picked, Max.
Mm-hmm.
And that film
Thanks for letting me choose.
And that film is called Annihilation.
He wanted to watch Showgirls, but I sort of dissuaded him from that. I figure you won't. It's not as intellectual.
You weren't supposed to say that.
You can edit it out. It's okay. But when you were swearing a whole bunch, like swearing your butt off right before the show started, edit that out too.
Should we maybe give people, for those who haven't seen it for a while, give a short description of the film?
Sure. So it was made by the same guy that did the movie Ex Machina. That's the one with the android chick. Very, very good film made by a very, very good writer and director. I can't remember what his name is. I think it's Alex Garland.
Yeah.
I might be wrong about that. Oh, it is?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, my memory ain't that bad. So it's about some sort of entity that comes from outer space. Obviously, it's alien, and it lands on our planet.
It's Killer Clown from Outer Space.
Yeah, it was a killer clown.
Yeah.
It's, the movie is famous for having one of the worst twist endings. Makes M. Night Shyamalan look positively genius, like Stephen Hawking.
He was in the background, just hidden it all.
The whole time. Yeah. And also Natalie Portman and Oscar Isaac were dead the whole time. No, it's not a killer clown. It's just some sort of entity that's sort of really, really difficult to comprehend, let's say, by human language and human standards. It comes to Earth, and what seems to happen is that from this entity, there is what is called the shimmer that sort of emits from it. It's sort of like a translucent wall that, of course, shimmers and is expanding out from where the thing landed on Earth. And what is happening with within this shimmering wall is unknown, because anybody that enters it never comes back, except for one person. This one person, I can't remember his name is Kane in the movie, and he's played by Oscar Isaac. He's the first person to come out of the shimmer, and he finds his wife after leaving, who's played by Natalie Portman. And obviously, because he left the shimmer, I'm guessing the U.S. government or some sort of secret agency is interested in how he was able to get out and what he saw while he was in there. But once he gets out, he starts to have all these convulsions, and he isn't able to speak right away, so he's put under intensive care. And so, once Natalie Portman gets looped into this whole conspiracy involving aliens, she, because I think she said she's a biologist at Johns Hopkins, she is determined by, the suits, the people in charge, that she might be able to provide some valuable information about what's going on within the Shimmer. So she is paired up with a super team of female soldiers who are all badass. There's Tessa Thompson, who's sort of like top 5 most beautiful women on the planet, in my opinion. There's obviously Natalie Portman, also probably top 5. Jennifer Jason Leigh, and then the one chick that's from Jane the Virgin. I can't remember what her real name is. And then there's one other lady. I don't know. But yeah, team of 5, they go in there, and then chaos ensues. And then I won't spoil anything else beyond that.
This film is long to explain. That's But yeah, if you haven't seen it, then you should go watch it, because we are going to talk about some spoilers. And I mean it. It's a sci-fi, but it's not one of those ordinary sci-fis. So go into it with a perspective of this is 100 IQ level, deep.
Yeah. See, yeah, it's not like Star Wars, where it's a lot. And it's not like there's anything wrong with Star Wars. Star Wars is fantastic in its own right, but it's not sci-fi proper. It's sci-fi fantasy. It has a sci-fi aesthetic, what with spaceships and aliens, which you can reasonably assume that both of those will become tangible reality in the future. But obviously, things like the Force, maybe lightsabers, they won't likely become a reality. Whereas with this, if we assume that aliens exist, which it's an infinite galaxy, I think it's right to maybe assume that aliens, extraterrestrial life exists. What would happen if they came to Earth? And Annihilation poses one pretty frightening example. It sort of borrows from a lot of H.P. Lovecraft themes. What would happen if these alien beings with higher consciousnesses than we do, that ways that it perceives reality different from humans, what would happen if we came into contact with that? And that's Annihilation in a nutshell.
Why do they always depict aliens like they're some sort of not talking animals? Because shouldn't they in reality just be like humans in a way?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the plenitude of alien life, if you go with how big the universe is, I believe that alien life would come in a bunch of different shapes and forms and sizes. It's far more numerous and in diversity than the animal species that we have here on Earth.
Yeah.
Right?
If we're going to talk about this film, I have a little bit more if I should rate this film out of 10, I would give a 8.6, because a lot of things that do distract me is the story itself. There's some things that kind of bugs me, like the fact that they don't. I had some thoughts like, why don't they just go a little bit inside of the perimeter, just to see what's going on inside, and they don't walk in with a radiation suit. It's like those small things. I know I'm nitpicking, but as a story writer, it's sometimes kind of distracting to see. So that's a small thing. And the thing that shocked me is probably how well written it is meaning. The first time I saw it, I didn't know what to expect, so I didn't know there was a deep meaning behind the film. So that kind of caught me off guard. So I had to see it here again before we were going to do the podcast, and a lot of things began to click. And I don't know if you want to talk about those, because I find that this part of the film, the whole meaning part, incredibly interesting.
Sorry, what are you asking me to speak to first?
About the meaning of the film.
Well, I think the basic meaning of the film is that human beings, the thought that there might be beings out there that are greater than human beings in terms of body and mind, is quite frightening to us, because we don't know how to deal with that. We can barely even deal with our own plane of existence as it is. And if we were to come into contact with that, what implications would there be for that? Would we be able to contend with it? And Annihilation seems to suggest that for the most part, no, we wouldn't. Because if you see with the characters in the film, they slowly start to lose their identities. As you remember, I can't remember the name of the chick from Jane the Virgin.
Josie's
whatever
friend.
her
What's her
Josie's
name?
friend.
Yeah, let's just call that.
The Hispanic chick.
Yeah,
she
half black. I don't know.
Half black. Yeah, I think she's. Anyways, forgive me if I get it wrong, but she starts to say, "Hey, my fingerprints on my hands are starting to move around, and your fingerprint it's highly correlated with how one views oneself as an individual. Your fingerprint is unlike any other fingerprint on the planet, right?
Yeah.
So if you start to lose that, what does that say about you? Are you truly your own individual? If it can if a part of your body can be manipulated in that way, what about your mind? Because as we see at the very end of the film, when Lena, quote unquote, asks Kane, quote unquote, if he's still Kane, he says, "I don't think so." And I think the reason why he says that is because parts of who Kane was are still intact. Obviously, he still looks like Kane, but internally, in terms of his psyche, it's either partially gone or entirely gone.
Yeah.
Right?
I didn't think about that, but that's quite fascinating. But one thing I definitely noticed throughout the film was the theme of... It's not a theme, but like they mention a part of the film about I can't say this word. Pathology, which basically means different cells and organism all sharing from the same structure, which is not something that is normal in the universe. And I found out that I didn't know quite what that had to do with, like, if we're going to put it into what's the moral of the story. But there was this one scene that made me click and understand what the film was about, and that's when what's her name? Lena goes to the old chick. What's her name? The psychiatrist.
Jennifer. Yeah.
Yeah. She goes to her and she asks like why Kane went to this suicide mission, and she mentions that the self-destruction is a natural process from self-hate, basically. And that's exactly like how cells also destroy themselves. And throughout the film, I'm kind of talking about a lot, but I'm going to bring it back together. We find out that Lena has cheated with Kane and went to bed with like this guy named Dan. And when she doesn't want to do it anymore, she says, "This is wrong." He says to her, "It's not me you hate, it's yourself." And that's when I understood what the film was kind of personally about. It's about that how humans self-destruct themselves into, hurting themselves. And it's not because it's something that we want to, it's just something that comes from self-hatred.
Yeah.
And that's something, correlates with cells because they destroy themselves, not because natural, it's a mistake almost. So the only way that they can, change this is through the alien. That's the point of, it's the theme of the film, Annihilation. It's about the only way we can get through this is about destruction of almost humanity in itself. Because we are faulty in that way that we are self-destructive to the earth, to ourselves and our friends and families around, which I believe is incredibly well written in the film. It truly shocked me.
Yeah, it's that aspect of the film. I felt like it could have been expanded upon more. You said before the 8.6 out of 10. I think I'm right there with you. I think the emotion probably could have be expanded upon a little bit more in terms of its impact. But I think the symbolism that you're referring to was actually quite apt. And if human beings do want to transcend their biological limitations, to be able to live on, to leave a trace of themselves, they probably need that contact with something that is approaching immortality, something that can bring them closer to the life-creating principle rather than the death principle, which is obviously what we see in regards to Natalie Portman with that one, I don't even know what call it, a copy of herself that she comes into contact with in the lighthouse.
It's the alien, right? I don't know if it's the alien, because this is the thing that kind of confused me at the film. Is that
I think it's alien. I prefer to refer to it as a copy. I have my thoughts on what that is.
I always thought, we could talk about that another time.
I'm just not sure. It's a lot of. Well, I mean, we could talk about it here. Me proposing a couple of ideas to you. see what you think about them before I put them in a video. Although it might be a little bit too complicated because I haven't really thought them out that far.
Yeah, I don't know. I just felt like in the film, it's an organism. Like they talk about in the beginning of the film that everything came from one cell. Big bang and evolution, and all that. So it feels like it's not as much as an alien, but more a new natural start. Like the meteor that destroyed like the dinosaurs and all that. It's a fresh new start to humanity. That's what I felt like. It's not an alien so much as it is a virus or a natural process that just comes through.
And being able to adopt to that natural process, there's going to be positives to it, obviously, but there's also going to be negative implications to it because, as we see throughout the movie, it does lead to some form of self-destruction, which in a way leads to something positive. Like on the one hand, Josie's friend, I gotta look up her name, man. She complains isn't the right word, but you know what I mean, about her skin, the fingerprints on her skin moving around, and whether she's going to lose that part of herself. Obviously, there's pain that comes along with that, but maybe human beings inevitably will need to lose what makes them human if they want to evolve to higher planes of consciousness.
Yeah, there's also in the beginning of the film, like when Kane comes home to Lena, we learn because we find out that like Kane knows about the affair she had with Dan in the film, and like that kind of ruined the connection between them. And I like focusing on the camera in the film. It's very well shot film. Like it's probably one of the best looking film I've seen in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Just gonna say that. But like at the beginning of we see them together. They always split apart. They're not really together. The camera's always focusing on Lean on the left side and Kane on the right side. And there's this one shot where they like where she holds his hand, and in the front ground there's like a glass of water, and it kind of is like distracting. Like it's not a normal communication they have right now, and they just show that through visual storytelling, which I think is fantastic. But in the end of the film, when they see each other and they are quote unquote alien, they finally hug it out, and then we see like the front ground of two classes now finally coming together, and you can see that they are now one again.
Oh.
And so that's kind of where I also get from that the film is about, we are self-destructive human beings, and we destroy relationship and marriages like how Lena does. But now, because of the alien, it's a fresh new start almost. I don't think the point of the film is to say that we should die and let a new generation come. It's just a criticism of like how human beings we function, about how we just self-destruct ourselves.
And then how something new will be born from the ashes, like the phoenix. And speaking of all that, I actually wanted to point out something that maybe you might have missed, because it's actually something that I missed the first time. Did you happen to notice the Ouroboros tattoo on Lena's arm?
I noticed that, yeah.
Yeah, did you notice that was also showing up on the arms of the other girls?
No.
Yeah, at times, what you will see happen...
Oh, no.
I think in regards to... I just looked up her name. The character's name is Anya,
Oh,
played
yeah.
by Gina Rodriguez. You can actually see her with the Ouroboros tattoo. Now, for those of you who don't know what the Ouroboros is, it's the classical image of the snake eating its own tail.
Ah.
The Ouroboros... although what's interesting is that the Ouroboros, although it's usually depicted as a circle with the snake head eating its own tail, the tattoo in this movie is actually that of the infinity symbol. It's still the snake, but it's not a circle, it's the infinity symbol. And what you see happen is you see that tattoo pop up. I only saw it happen to Lena and Anya. It might have happened to the other characters and I just didn't pick up on it. But the importance of that tattoo and sort of what it explains about what we were just talking about, there are other implications for it as well. But in regards to the two characters is that, it's talks about the natural cycle of life and death. Some things need to die so that it can be reborn in a different form.
Is it the world serpent? It's like that's like what you mean with this.
Kind of.
Okay, yeah. Because like that's the Northern mythology that I know.
Well, that's a whole other thing. Like the world serpent, in regards to Norse mythology, is a little bit different from the Ouroboros. The world serpent sort of signifies the overall spirit of the earth and the universe. It's not exactly like the Ouroboros, but it's similar enough, let's say. But yeah, you're on the right track.
Yeah. I think there was one section of the film. It was when Cain came to the lighthouse. He records himself like giving his he's going to kill himself like with a flash bomb, and he holds like a little speech. And I don't quite know what it's about, but there was one line where in the end it's the last line he says. He says to it looks like he's talking to the alien side and says find Lena. Which is like, but I didn't. Have you like tried to find out what like the point of that scene is? Like what he says, that he's not a man, he's not human, he had a good life. That's what he says, because I don't quite get it.
Well, what happened is that, the closer that he came to the source of the shimmer, he started to feel his consciousness and his body become altered, and because of that, what was him was starting to be overridden by the material that was emerging from the source through the shimmer. And so he slowly either dissipated from being Cain, or the team that he was with, they started to merge with him. And there's a strong hint of that, because if you happen to notice during that scene, the way that Cain was speaking, he had seemingly, I might be wrong about this, but he seemed to have a different accent compared to the way that he talks throughout the rest of the film, right?
He had
so what does that tell you?
He had like a little bit of a New York accent, I think, or something like that.
Kinda, yeah, and that's sort of similar to what we see happen with that one monster where, what was it? Yeah, I think her name is Cassie. Yeah, when she gets eaten by the bear, a part of her merges with the bear. Is it a bear? I think
it's a bear. Yeah, it's a bear.
Yeah. And then when when the bear roars, you can hear her saying, "Help me." Well, sort of the same basic principle happens with Cain and whoever was with him on his team. He started to merge with him because he was starting to lose what was his own individuality, and that individuality was merging with one of his other teammates and create something completely different.
There was one, I don't know why I'm so fixated about this scene, but there was also one where she like gets interviewed by this, Asian in the radiation suit. And you mentioned about she looks at her, snake tattoo. But what I thought she was looking at was the fact that the next scene, you see that she has a bruise from the crocodile. But when she's like talking to the Asian, she doesn't have that anymore. Does that like mean... When I first saw it, I felt like it was a hint to she's not like Lena in the film. She is the alien, and I thought
no. I think what happened was a part of her consciousness merged with the alien. That's why you see at the very end of the movie her what is it, retinas? Yeah, retinas start to light up.
Yeah, or like her eyes.
Because it's not like what happened with Cain, where I think the original body of Cain was killed. He killed himself using the white phosphorus, and then his copy went out to find Lena. I think the original body of Lena was maintained, but her consciousness was different now.
Yeah, I think one thing I thought like also is now we'll talk about the meaning of the film, but maybe we could discuss a little bit about the I often talk about the atmosphere of a film. Like when I introduce a new film to people, I like to say to them, what kind of feeling are you going to have when you see this film? And I saw it on the Netflix, and they said it was like a psychological thriller. I don't quite think that's a right description. I would call
it kind of, but it's not a psychological horror in the way that psychological horror is normally portrayed.
Yeah, like Shutter Island, I believe. That's like a psychological horror film to me, almost. I will describe it as a thriller because, like the bear scene you mentioned, I mean, every time I see it, I want to... I'm kind of freaked out by that scene.
Yeah, it's kind of... Yeah, well, what I think is actually quite magnificent about Annihilation is that it combines so many different emotions and themes into one film. Like, on the one hand, you do have great sci-fi, but you also have great horror, you have great emotion, you think deeply about the different philosophical and moral concepts that it brings up. And the fact that it's able to combine all those things, whereas normally that doing that sort of thing would kill most movies, the fact that they were able to accomplish it is quite a testament to the power of Alex Garland's writing and directing.
Yeah. I think also I was scared like that I wouldn't have an emotional connection to any of the characters in the film. The only one that I was kind of didn't quite have an emotional connection to was Josie in the film. I don't know, I just didn't really feel like we know that much about it. Like, we found out that she has self-harm, but that's about it.
There are times where you actually do get to have a bit of an emotional connection with some characters, but other times it's just there was nothing that was really explored there. Like, I think they're in the canoes where Cassie's telling Lena, Josie cuts herself, and I think Cassie, what did she say, her child died?
Yeah.
And then those aspects aren't really explored. Now, granted, I think it would have made the movie a little bit longer, but I don't know. I felt like there could have been some opportunity there to elevate Annihilation from being great as it is to something truly transcendent and timeless.
Well, I sometimes believe you don't need to have like an idea of... Sometimes you don't need to know the backstory, because like when you think about... When people criticize Snoke in like Star Wars The Last Jedi, the argument also that he doesn't have any backstory. My problem is that he doesn't have a personality. He's just a, what do you call it? A Palpatine clone. And that's kind of annoying to see again. So what I often, when I talk about characters that either need to have interesting story, like backstory, or because Lena in the film, like her personality, I wouldn't quite know what to call her in personality-wise, but her backstory is very interesting to me. That's why I liked her. But with, the one that's sober, like, what's it,
Anya.
Yeah, Anya. You can see that she's very frustrated in the film, and she's kind of like us in the film. You just want to leave. I don't want to be there. So
yeah, I think in regards to the emotion of the film, I think, you definitely got the most of that from Anya, because you truly feel her despair.
Yeah. Also with Shepard. No, not Shepard. What's her name? The old lady. Is she called Shepard?
The old lady?
Yeah.
No, Cassie's last name is Shepard. The older lady, her name is Dr. Ventress.
Yeah, Dr. Ventress. Like, her character is also very interesting because you can also see that we never know in the film what's actually going on with her. Like, we learn that she has no friends, no families. She really has no reason to live. That's kind of what they're saying. So, like, and that's why she's going to Lighthouse, is because what else is there in reality to do? And I also think that was very interesting done. It's not because her personality was, like, she's depressed, you can see the film, but it's really her backstory that we don't know what has actually gone wrong in her life. She just doesn't have a reason. She's just a husk, basically.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to see that. So that's like how I criticize characters in film. Either they have an interesting theme or like backstory, or they have an interesting personality.
Yeah. It's the backstories of the characters are actually well written. We just don't really have much opportunity for us to sort of marinate on those characters' backstories and intuit how they feel. It's really just there to... The backstories are basically just there to help elevate the movie's intellectual themes. And while it works in that regard, it's sort of not elevated to that level of perfection.
Yeah, for example, that's why I kind of don't like Josie, because she doesn't really have... Like, she has backstory, but we don't learn anything else about it. And the personality, I could like say she's scared, but personally, I don't really find that interesting throughout the film.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
We already have one that's like scared. That's Anya, sorry. So like having two of them was kind of weird to like, because she's also scared. She's just a little bit more frustrated in the film. So personally, she was the weakest link throughout the film.
Yeah, but I agree.
But overall, the characters are very well written. She was just kind of the one that stuck out to me. But that's it.
Thankfully, I was willing to forgive it because, she's played by Tessa Thompson.
Yeah, I think there's also, like, I didn't want to... usually when I was a little bit like a year before, I usually, when I saw like a film didn't understand, I immediately went to like find out what it was about on YouTube. But now I don't like doing that anymore. I find it much more fun to figure it out yourself. But when I still research about this film, I found like a lot of videos talking about the ending, because the ending is still very much like, I'm not talking about the very last scene. I'm talking about the scene with the alien. Like what what is actually going on with that scene when she kills that alien with the, like, we don't know. Personally, I'm confused. Like, I want to talk about this film, the meaning, but that whole scene doesn't really make sense. I need to watch it again.
Could I maybe like give you my interpretation of it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm still trying to work out how to verbalize this in my head, so please forgive me if I totally mess this up.
No.
But okay, so what do we see happen at the end of the film? We see Jennifer Jason Leigh's character, Dr. Ventress. Her body is basically annihilated, and it turns into this circular being where there's like a light and things are emanating out from it.
Mm-hmm.
And what emanates out from it is sort of like a mandala. You know what a mandala is?
No, sorry.
Mandala, it's sort of, you recognize it if you see it. It's a bunch of different concentric shapes. Imagine, yeah, just look it up. You'll know what a mandala is. It's sort of hard to explain, but it's a symbol of wholeness that you can find it in cultures all around the world.
Oh, wait,
it's usually in the form of a circle. There's a whole bunch of different shapes, but all the shapes seem to be emanating from a center.
Yeah.
And this is, I'm going to try and talk about this here so that way I don't talk about it in my video, because I do talk a lot about Carl Jung in my videos and people are sort of making a joke about it. But honestly, I think it's applicable here because I cannot ignore the Jungian symbolism here. So the light in the center of that being and the mandala emerging from it, what that sort of tells me, and I'll back it up with more evidence in a second, at least I'll try to, is that whatever this thing is that it's sort of so beyond human consciousness and so transcendent that the only way that human beings can perceive it is by light and by mandalas.
Yeah.
Now, in regards to Jung, he took mandala symbolism and light as sort of symbols of the self. And the self is sort of that higher form, that higher form of ourselves that we all aspire to be in our lives.
Okay.
And that's why people look up to symbols like Jesus or Buddha, because people want to emulate them because they view those as the ideal.
Yeah.
And so whatever this entity is, I imagine that it's sort of like something that can help us achieve that greater ideal. Because what you see happen is once Natalie Portman's character interacts with this entity in the form of the light in the mandala, it transforms into her.
Yeah.
Right? And it mirrors her. And what that sort of tells me is that by interacting with this thing, this self-incarnated, let's say, she's actually come into contact with the higher version of herself. And the higher version of herself is trying to take over because it is the higher version of herself. Right? But she actually happens to win out against it because she manages to outsmart it. Also, I have other suspicions to believe that maybe there was a bit of Jungian psychology because influencing this film, because all this takes place within a lighthouse. Now, did you ever happen to watch my video on the lighthouse? On a movie called The Lighthouse?
I haven't. I was actually going to watch The Lighthouse a couple of days ago because I saw you had made a video on it, but I haven't seen it yet.
So what's interesting is that when it comes to movies and games that I have found have been heavily influenced by Jungian psychology, like this has been confirmed.
They have a lighthouse.
One of those, they have a lighthouse in it, and the lighthouse seems to be a symbol of the self. And the reason why it is a symbol of the self is because it's sort of like that guiding light in the darkness, right?
Okay,
sort
yeah.
of,
because
yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah, I also thought about the lighthouse because like it was so specific. Why a lighthouse? Why not just a bomb yacht?
Right.
And the thing they're shooting rockets outside. Sorry if that is noisy. Can you hear it?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Kill myself.
Sounds like somebody's climbing stairs.
Yeah. But basically, what I thought like the whole lighthouse thing was, it was discovering yourself. That's what I also thought, because I wrote down here, the meaning of the film is about they're all damaged goods and they go into the shimmer to be reborn. And that's what happens in the lighthouse in a way. Because
they are reborn.
Yeah, because like you talk about lighthouse in a way, because lighthouse were used to like for ships to find out where to go and not crash. I personally just saw that more like in a typical light sense. How do you call it?
Just a practical application of a lighthouse. You didn't really see the symbolism behind it. Well, what you're seeing here with the lighthouse in the movie is the same way that, Jung saw the lighthouse as a symbol. It's supposed to be a guiding light towards where we need to go. And that's also how the self was symbolized, because the self is sort of the light that guides us to where we want to go. If Jesus is, let's say you're a Christian and you view Jesus as the self, well, the ultimate light that you want to end up as is like Jesus. You want to be Jesus or be like Jesus, right? And what do you see happen in Annihilation? Well, once Lena reaches the lighthouse and she interacts with the light in the form of, like, taking the form of something like a mandala, it transforms into her. She has come into contact with herself. Right? You see what I'm talking about? Do I sound crazy?
No, I believe you're true, because I also, there's like a, they also bring up like God in a short section of the film, where Kane and Lena are in the bed and they're talking, and they talk about how God doesn't make mistakes, but Lena disagrees and talks about how cells in reality are like, they're not naturally meant to actually be old. It's actually a mistake. And so I believe if we're going to connect that also about Jesus, it's definitely, I would agree with you. I don't think you're crazy at all. I believe that makes a lot of sense.
Actually, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I probably would have never thought about that. It's that what we're trying to do is we're trying to transcend our death, and the way that we have to do that is we have to go through certain tribulations so that we can reach the light that we are striving to, just like a ship on stormy seas tries to make dock where it needs to go, right? So, okay, well, that's good. See, and it really, really annoys me, because people are like, oh, how is it going to connect this to Jung again? Well, I'm sorry, but if the boot fits, right?
Wear it, yeah. But I like Youngie boy. But
yeah, I do too. But look, I sort of get annoyed with myself, because it's like, okay, you got to stop.
But he's like he's like the most famous, philosopher in a way you could say. So like, not talking about him is like, that's like the basis. If you're getting into psychology or philosophy or whatever, he's like the go-to in a way. I personally went to Nietzsche first, because I like his theories about nihilism. But still, Carl Jung, he is the baby steps to getting into big brain mode.
Big brain mode. That's the right way to put it, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. I could talk about ours. I saw Chris Stuckman. Do you know that Chris Stuckman?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I watched his.
Yeah, I'm subscribed to him. He's great.
I don't always care about seeing what the film's about. I learned that going into a film with a certain like expectation is important. For example, I watched Silence of the Lambs, and I thought it was going to be completely about, Anthony Hopkins' character, what's he called, Hannibal. Right. Yep. But that wasn't it. He's actually just 50 minutes in the film. So that was kind of weird. So when I watched it a second time and I knew what I went into, I enjoyed it a lot more. So with this film, I watched Chris Stuckman's film and I review, and he told us that he saw it with a couple of friends, and when they were done watching in the cinema, they talked about it for hours. And that's exactly what's happening right now, because there's so much to talk about right now. I'm being serious, because the film has...
Yeah, I know what you're trying to say. See, the problem is, like, even the whole point is that you're not really supposed to know. Nobody knows what the entity is. All we know is that it sort of transcends human consciousness. And that's made perfectly clear, especially at the end, because, as you said, the Asian guy who's played by Benjamin Wong is like, so-and-so, was it alien? And she's like, I don't know. What color was it? I don't know.
Did he ask that? What colors?
Oh.
No, he asked like, what was prawns? Is it like prawns or carbon?
Carbon-based, yeah, that's right.
Based.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't know. And that's the whole point. We don't know. And the fact that we don't know is both horrifying, but also maybe it's exactly what we need. And that's exactly the sort of question that we need to contemplate.
Well, I think my theory on it is she says she don't know, but she's basically the alien right now. So, and I believe the next scene like we have is what I talked about with him and Kane in the same, like they meet each other and they're like, "Are you Kane?" No, but they still end up hugging each other because it's now Annihilation, and now we're reborn and we're finally able to be one again. Because there was right before when she's like she goes to meet him, she drinks a glass of water, she puts it down, and you can see two mortar particles like coming together to form like one, and then she asks, "Can I see Kane again?" So that like kind of in my head that looks like the alien reminds herself what's the purpose of the alien job right now, and that is to become one with the whole world. And I don't know how to quite say it.
So what do you mean become one with the whole world?
And I don't quite know how to say it, because again, now when I think about it, I say like I know what the alien job is. We don't actually. Now I'm kind of confused. Because like what I think it wants is to create a perfect world with no faults, where DNA is perfect. It doesn't create cancer or anything, and we don't have self-harm, basically, is what the whole film is also about. And he does that beginning with Kane and Lena. Now their marriage relationship is back to starting again. It's a new chapter for this new kind of race, alien race. That's kind of what I mean. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, I think... No, I know what you're trying to say, and I think, it's sort of backed up by what we see in the movie, because what do we see happening? We see crossbreeds between different plant species and different animals, and how it's affecting the humans as well. And the whole point is trying to create sort of that unity, that cosmic unity that is sort of unable to be expressed by human language, but it's something sort of approximating the mathematical harmony of the universe.
Yeah.
And that's whatever this entity is trying to do. That's why, the flowers are attached to the same stem. That's why the bushes look like humans towards the end. That's why Josie's body is sort of taking on plant life. And that also, interesting that you bring that up, that union is also reflective of sort of that alien entity with its, how it looks like light and mandalas at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
That it represents that totality of being, let's say.
Yeah. I don't know if this is gonna be the last thing we're gonna discuss about, but I definitely want to bring this up, is the music in the film.
Oh, the music's so good, man. Ooh, it's so good. I love that type of music.
Oh man, like I'm a musician, I'm not a singer, but I play piano and all that. But I also study in like music theory and all that, and I love seeing the film where like themes are like theme music has some kind of theme. I really am confused to like what some things mean in the film. Like there's one part of like where I know exactly what the music is trying to do, like the scene where she meets the alien and it's like this the mandolin, what do you call it?
Mandala.
Yeah, mandala, and this kind of punk music plays very like a bass almost. Yeah, that's very much trying to be like, this is a unknown identity music kind of theme. We don't know what this is. But there were some times where acoustic started playing, which really didn't fit at all in the film, if you notice, where they just play a guitar. And I'm really trying to figure out, when did I feel like, what's the purpose of the acoustic guitar? What's that supposed to mean in the film?
Well, maybe one way you can interpret it is that, the acoustic guitar, whenever you think of music, the first instrument that a lot of people think of is a guitar. And the guitar, especially with, the classic rock that is playing in the film, I think there was a song by Crosby, Stills, Nash, whatever the name of that band is. And, the closer that they go into, the further they go into the shimmer and the closer they approach the lighthouse, that type of music sort of migrates away from stuff that's familiar to human beings into something that's a lot more unorthodox, let's say. It's cool, but it's not like anything that you tend to hear on the radio, let's say.
But I believe it's interesting because the whole film, sounded like it's unharmonic music, basically. It's not meant to sound Good. I will still listen to it because I think it sounds amazing. But so it was kind of that was just something that kind of put me off in the film, not in a bad way, but it kind of shocked me when they played acoustic guitar because it didn't fit at all. Usually you would just hear sci-fi noises all around, but the film didn't do that, which I think was.
I think when musicians do that, it's just so creative, especially in regards to movies. I think my favorite example of that. Have you ever seen The Shining?
No.
Oh, it's arguably. Do you know what The Shining is?
Yeah, it's with Jack Nicholson, one of my.
There you go. If you want to hear a great example of disjointed yet perfectly fitting music, The Shining probably has one of the best examples of that. It sounds so weird, but it matches everything that's going on in that movie so well.
I'll maybe check it out.
I highly recommend it. It's one of the greatest horror movies ever made.
There was one theme that I definitely picked up on, and that was there's this one theme called The Alien. It's when they both meet and like the alien is copying her movements. And I heard the music was kind of delaying almost. And that's because the alien is trying to learn how she works, you know. In the beginning, it's kind of slow, not fully, you know, going the same, how do you call it? He's kind of behind her almost in how she moves. But then slowly he learns to how to be like her without even looking at the end. And the music was kind of delaying almost because he is trying to learn how to be exactly like her. And then in the end it's harmonic because he has fully learned now how to be her. That was a genius like soundtrack. I tried to find out who it was, and there's someone called Ben Salisbury and one called Jeff Barrow. I hope I didn't butcher both of those guys' name. But he has really not made any songs that I know of. Or he did I can't speak today. God, Ex Machina. That's awesome.
Also by Alex Garland. You saw that movie, right?
No.
Oh, yeah, that movie's awesome. Oh, you never saw Ex Machina? Oh, dude, if you liked Annihilation, you'll love Ex Machina.
Is it better or worse than Annihilation?
I've only seen it once, but I remember when I saw it, I was like, this is my favorite movie of the year. And I look back on it quite fondly. And then when I saw Annihilation, it's like, that was great, but probably not as good as Ex Machina. So, I don't know, whatever that tells you.
I think it's on, like, we live in a different country, so we have different, like, places we watch. And I think it was on Viaplay. That's, like, one we have here in Scandinavia. So I will try to check it out there because the concept of it looked very cool. Like, it's about a robot trying to learn human emotions, or something like that, human love.
Yeah, what's her name? Alicia Vikander? She fine, man.
Well, maybe we have talked enough for today.
Yeah, I actually got to go in a couple of minutes, but this has been awesome, dude. I love talking movies. It's not something that I tend to talk about, because my channel is more, even though I do say, and I did say at the beginning of this podcast that I tend to talk more so about video games, I do love talking about movies. Yeah. And I'm glad that you were able to provide me an outlet for that.
I also enjoy doing podcasts because sometimes when we talk, we begin to shape our opinions a little bit better. Because when I write a script, sometimes when I read it again, I begin to realize that was wrong. But when I do a podcast, slowly my thinking of the film gets, like, naturally processed. Yeah, a little bit clearer. So it's actually very nice to talk about the film with a different perspective than me.
Well, when you articulate your thoughts out loud or you write them down on paper, what it sort of does is it allows you to perceive them in a less chaotic way. Like, you're making order out of the stuff that's within your mind. And once you see it for what it is, you get to see it for all its flaws and all its what's the opposite of flaw? All its beauty. It's a little bit of a strong word, but you get the point. And then, you get to figure out what things that you can do with it. I sort of do the same thing. I let it stew around in my head for a while when I'm writing a script, then I write it out, leave it, come back, see if I can edit it. And I always do.
That's awesome. Well, if you guys liked this podcast, well, stay tuned because I'm going to be trying to release more. It took me a while because it's hard to get YouTubers on here because, I'm not so popular. So I appreciate that you, Max, was the second one to come here, man.
Hey, no problem, dude. And thanks so much for being such a strong fan of my channel. I'm always seeing you in my live chats, and it's always a pleasure to see your name pop up. So I figured it was the least I can do.
Thank you, man. If you guys like feminism, you should check out Annihilation, okay? It's a great
Well, it depends on what you mean by feminism, although, anyways.
Okay, if you're a Nazi feminist, you should not watch my videos. But if you are a calm feminist, you should watch the film. It's pretty epic. But I will definitely also be releasing more videos along the way. I'm trying to post at least a video once per week. It's hard, and I have vacation right now, so it's extra hard. But I will try to do more. But more important than me, go subscribe to Max, okay? He is amazing. If you guys don't do that, I will cut off your testicles.
Fact check true.
Well,
to both, me being amazing and the cutting off of the... yeah.
Well, thank you guys for joining us, and thank you again, Max, for being on here.
Yeah, no problem, dude.
This was Butts and Mates, episode 2, and goodbye.
Peace.